Barbara McClintock was born on June 16, 1902 in Hartford, Connecticut. She was born to parents Thomas Henry McClintock, a homeopathic physician, and Sarah Ryder Handy. She had 3 siblings. Left to right is Mignon, Malcolm Ryder, or Tom, Barbara, and Marjorie. She was actually born Eleanor McClintock, but when she was young, her parents decided that Eleanor was a feminine and delicate name and was not appropriate for her, so they chose Barbara instead. She grew up in Connecticut and in New York. Her family actually had very little money, so the fact that she wanted to do research caused people to look at her skeptically. Though people looked at her skeptically, her father supported her. And with his support, Barbara went to Cornell's College of Agriculture. Her degrees were actually all in botany. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in 1923, a Master of Science in 1925, and a PhD in 1927. It was previously reported that women could not major in genetics at Cornell, thus her majoring in botany, but recent research showed that women could earn graduate degrees in Cornell's plant breeding department when McClintock was a student at Cornell. The characteristics of organisms are determined by heredity, or what genes your parents have that pass down to you and future generations. During McClintock's time at Cornell, she assembled a group that studied cytogenetics in corn. Cytogenetics is essentially a branch of genetics, but is also a part of cell biology that is concerned with how the chromosomes relate to cell behavior, particularly mitosis and meiosis. McClintock's research on corn focused on developing ways to visualize and characterize corn chromosomes, like why are some kernels different colors, and how does this get passed down through the generations of corn. During this time, she also developed a technique of using carmine staining to visualize these corn chromosomes. Carmine is a pigment of a bright red color obtained from the aluminium complex derived from carminic acid. Her breakthrough publications from this cytogenetic research in corn led to her being awarded several postdoctoral fellowships. This funding allowed her to continue to study genetics at Cornell, the University of Missouri, and the California Institute of Technology. In the summers of 1931 and 1932, McClintock worked with geneticist Louis Statler, who introduced her to the use of X-rays as a mutagen. Barbara then used this for her research on corn. She identified ring chromosomes, which form when the ends of a single chromosome fuse together after radiation damage. From this evidence, McClintock hypothesized that there must be a structure on the chromosome tip that would normally ensure stability. She also received a fellowship from the Guggenheim Foundation, which provided 6 months training in Germany during a period in 1933 and 1934. While in Germany, she worked with Richard B. Goldschmidt, who was the director of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Biology in Berlin. She then came back to Cornell, being supported by a Rockefeller Foundation grant, and remained there until 1936. Louis Statler offered her an assistant professorship at the University of Missouri in Columbia in the Department of Botany. Even though her research was progressing at Missouri, McClintock was not satisfied with her position. She recalled being excluded from faculty meetings and was not made aware of positions available at other institutions. So she went to Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory after being offered a full-time research position there. In summer 1944, she began systematic studies on the mechanisms of the mosaic color patterns in maize, or corn seed, and the unstable inheritance of this mosaicism. During the 1940s and 50s, McClintock proved that genetic elements can sometimes change position on a chromosome and that this causes nearby genes to become active or inactive. This also often results in duplication of the same genetic material. This is called a transposable element, or a jumping gene. This discovery won Barbara McClintock the Nobel Prize in 1983 at the age of 81. She won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, and she was the first woman to win the award unshared. Gertie Corey previously won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, but she shared in that award with her husband since they did their research together. After McClintock, it took 36 more years for solely a woman to win the Nobel Prize in that same category. Barbara McClintock recalls being excluded from meetings. She always insisted on doing what she wanted when she wanted to do it. She was shy. When she found out she won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine and was the first sole woman to do so, she said, "That's nice," with little more than a brief smile. Nancy Hopkins, a renowned molecular biologist, met McClintock when she was a graduate student in the 1970s.
As a student, when we went to Cold Spring Harbor, Barbara is one of these paradoxical people. So whatever you hear about Barbara, the opposite you also hear, and is also true. So Barbara was a recluse, but Barbara loved people and sought them out. And I think think when I was young, I met Barbara. I was a graduate student, and she was about 70 years old, probably. And she, I think, might have been having a crisis in her life. I don't know this, but when I look back, and she needed somebody to talk to. She was quite unhappy at that time, and she, I think, might have seen me as a young woman who maybe, as a scientist, she could talk to. I don't know if this is correct, but maybe she was reliving these very difficult years of having to be a woman scientist at a time when it was so difficult. And she wanted to tell me how painful this had been and how difficult it had been for her, and how she would be asked to sit outside the door and the men would discuss her results and so forth. And she used to seek me out to go and talk about this, and she was terribly distressed about it because I didn't know her. And I just thought biology was wonderful and I was going to have a wonderful life, and I didn't want to hear about what a terribly hard time she'd had because it wasn't going to happen to me. And it was sort of very painful for me to hear her talk about how hard a life she'd had. She must have been about 70. I think she got through that period, and then she stopped talking about that, about how difficult it was at the time. And when I finished my career graduate school thing, and then I was offered a job at MIT, she said, "Don't go to a university, Nancy. The discrimination is so terrible, you'll never survive it." And I, didn't want to hear this depressing news. But of course, as time went by and I came to understand what she must have lived through, and to realize what I'd lived through myself, my sympathy, and I felt badly that I hadn't understood more when she needed someone to talk to about her life, that I hadn't understood it better. But we came to be good friends, and I went to her 90th birthday party, and I think I came to realize that she was one of the people I had loved most in my life. I truly loved that woman. I think she was amazing.
Barbara McClintock never married. She devoted her life to research instead. She was anything but a careerist, but she knew the importance of what she achieved and the importance of her life as a role model for other women. She worked very hard at what she did. She died at 90 years old of natural causes on September 2nd, 1992 in Huntington, New York City.